Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You're listening to the Moist Boys Podcast.
Oh, Lord. Hey, everybody. This is Josh. You're listening to the Moist Boys Podcast. We have another special event this week. This is officially the beginning of Jurassic Park month.
Yeah,
Jurassic Park. All right. Trying something new here on the old podcast. Trying to do a soundboard without actually having a soundboard, and we'll see how it turned out. That's how we like to do it here. Moist and loud.
Yeah, moist and loud. That's how we roll.
So Jurassic Park month. We're going to be discussing all of the Jurassic Park films, culminating with a hopefully special event that is as yet undone, but this is the beginning of this section of it. So today we're going to be talking about the OG Jurassic Park film, just known as Jurassic Park. Fortunately, they haven't gone back and titled it Episode 4 or anything yet, but I guess there's still time.
Yeah. Just give it another 20 years.
Yeah. So I'm Josh.
I'm Jonathan.
I'm the best bro, Heather.
And I'm Josue.
And the original Jurassic Park OG.
Not unpopular opinion. The best one.
Yeah. I was just realizing that a couple of years back they re-released it
In 3D.
in 3D in
Yeah.
theaters, and Jonathan, you guys went with me, and we went and saw it in theater, and I was like, "Oh, that's right, we actually watched Jurassic Park as a family."
That was in
that was
2012.
Yeah.
No, we were living in Linwood.
No, that was it. Was
So the end
it wasn't time for the
25th
for Jurassic
anniversary.
World to
So
They
that
were-
must have been 2015.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was just
we were
before
married.
World
We
came
were
out.
married, so
We weren't living in Linwood in 2015.
we weren't. It was probably 2014. The right before or right after we got married, or 13. I don't know.
I think it was 2013.
We
That
got
would be
married.
the
We got
20th
married in-
anniversary.
We got married
20th
in
anniversary of
13,
it?
so-
When is the 25th anniversary? Let's
Oh,
everybody
wait.
do math live on air.
Right now.
1993.
When
Shit,
did
I don't
we
have my
get married?
phone.
I got you. I got it.
Well, 2018 would have been the 25th. So it must have been
Okay,
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the
it would've
20th
been
And we,
20th
anniversary.
20th
we
anniversary.
got married in 2013. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
because I remember around that same time they re-released one of this or a couple of the Star Wars films in 3D.
Phantom Menace
Yeah,
was.
they were doing a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
run of that.
And then they
like-
re-released Lion King in 3D. And
And we chose to see none of those and instead went and watched the best re-release movie.
we watched all three of those in 3D.
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah.
Not as a group.
Oh, well, the two of us went
Yeah,
and saw.
we don't. We,
I-
don't care.
I
We did not
skipped
see
the-
Lion King.
I skipped the Phantom Menace on that.
Yeah, we did.
No, we didn't.
100%.
100% did not.
Yeah, we did. It's fine.
You might have
It's
watched
okay.
it. Did you watch it with your other wife?
Ooh. Dropping truth bombs on the Moist Boys podcast.
Did we watch it?
Did we watch it?
That is your other wife.
That's
so.
fair.
So another episode, another marriage ended. So
It's always our marriage.
It's always every time.
Yeah.
you guys' marriage is just on the line every episode.
That's
There it
okay.
is.
It's fine in between episodes, apparently, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So
we just forget about going to movies together. No big deal.
So OG Jurassic Park. I guess let's go through real quick. Kind of don't want to do a super play-by-play
Just
of
scene by scene talk. So like when
It
those like
opens with.
yeah. So like those trees rustling in the beginning when you think like what the
Damn.
fuck is it and turns out to be a tractor like
I actually think of rewatching it that, well, actually I've always thought it since I got the Blu-ray a few years ago that the opening is actually probably the worst looking part of it, just as far as the lighting's kind of bad and the film quality is a little off. It always looks a little, it's also super glossy, or not glossy, but like soft focus. So there's like a lot of it
Just that whole opening, the whole prologue. You mean?
Yeah, the whole opening section. There's like might be some mist in there, but it's like it always looks like a
smudgy.
Yeah, it's just a little smudgy. It also has the only unnamed death in this film, which will become a staple in the series afterwards. But in this film, it's the only is you have your guard,
random Costa Rican man.
Yeah, so one of the two not white people in the movie, and he doesn't get a name, and he's instantly killed.
Hashtag equality.
But yeah, after that scene is done, you're introduced to Muldoon, who will become important later.
Muldoon.
Bob Peck?
Bob Peck. Yeah.
Did he die?
He died in like 99 or 98. Like, I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Like,
I looked it up recently. I was like, oh shit, I thought he was like still kicking
stuff.
around.
Big TV actor, but that was like one of his only real major movies.
Yeah.
Movies,
well, he
period.
did there was another movie that he did. I don't want to get completely off the rails, but there's another movie that he did with Mark Hamill and Bill Paxton that was, I cannot remember the name of it, but it was like this like futuristic kind of like they were on the run, and I want to say it was Bob Peck was like an android, and Bill Paxton was like protecting him, and Mark Hamill was like a bounty hunter, like trying to kill.
I am pretty sure you've made this all.
No, I was going to say, welcome to our Jurassic Park podcast. Are we talking about androids?
I mean, I made up a movie in the last episode, so I feel it's only fair for
whatever, guys.
Make up an episode, a movie in this one.
The important part is
that Bob Peck was in it.
Is fantastic as Muldoon and does not get enough like screen time in this movie.
Yeah.
He does not get, his character needs more. Like,
I think he does enough with it though, and I think that's the one thing, well, one of the many things that the Steven Spielberg films have over the other sequels is that, well, I guess the third one does too, have a really good cast that shouldn't work, and I think maybe in the third one it doesn't really as much. But like in these first two films, you have like a really
odd cast. You have a very wide range cast, and yet they work really well together.
Yeah. So like the next two main leads that we're introduced to are Sam Neill and Laura Dern. I think at least Sam Neill, Steven Spielberg had to really fight to get him in it, because Universal's like, no, we need like a big action hero guy. We need like a Arnold Schwarzenegger type.
This is actually a real thing, is that he actually had to almost trick them into getting him, because they wanted a big name. They wanted a big action hero. And he was like,
do you know who the character is?
Do you know who the paleontologist is? Like, let's talk
Arnold
about this.
Yeah, no. Got to get to the trailer. They're going to get the Raptors.
I mean, it would have been amazing to hear him say some of the words that Samuel had to say. but I think it would have been it's just one of those things where like it wouldn't be the movie it is without this exact cast.
Yeah,
at this exact time.
This movie, like little kid me, fell in love with this movie and was like, Sam Neill is like the coolest dude in the world. And then, like a couple years later, I watched, is it Event Horizon? And then like kind of had that glass shattered for me a little bit. I was like, oh my God.
Very
Sam Neill's going to murder me.
I think that he's one of those actors, like early on when I stopped trusting actors being in movies to determine whether or not I watch or I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
Was when I realized like, oh, actors they don't have any control over what movie they're in.
They're just in it. Yeah. Who wrote and directed it is the more important of those.
Yeah. And then, so for you and I growing up, like we were definitely more fans of like character actors growing up. And like, so like being fan of character actors, like they have like even less choice than like big name stars. So like all the actors that we were fans of from the things we liked other stuff they did was just like, oh no,
I can't
this
watch
isn't
this.
any good.
Yeah.
So I think that was, it kind of destroyed that. But I was trying to think about this when we ended up first watching it, because it came out in 93. And I definitely know we didn't watch it then.
No.
And
Okay, 93, I was 5.
I was,
So we...
about 11 when this came out, and we went to see it in theaters. We were not a family who saw movies in theaters, but like I was into dinosaurs. That was my thing. We were going to see this, and I remember going into the theater and actually looking, because right at the same time the Mario Brothers movie was in theaters, and I remember going into Jurassic Park, looking across the aisle at Mario Brothers over there, going, God, I wish I could go see that. Like, I did not even know what I was stepping into going to see this movie. I don't even think the kid version of me did not even register that
I honestly wonder
this was going to be this movie.
if people did, like, not just little kids, but like people in general. Like when this came out, it came out in early, 93. Was there anything else like this out there?
Not
there
really.
was Terminator 2 the year before.
That's
It
yeah.
had some like special effects in it, but nothing.
Nothing
Nothing
like
on
this.
this level. Nothing that.
I mean, even now, it took a while, even with the other Jurassic Parks, to have something rival that, where you were like, this is so world creating and world shattering. Like, this is a real possibility. The science sounded so sound, and everything sounded is the right
At the
word.
time.
Sounded so sound and sounded so real that you were like, this is a real thing.
This could be the world
Oh
we
my
live
gosh,
in.
I need dinosaurs in my life.
The thing I would say about like Terminator 2, I would have to go back and watch that movie again, but I feel like all of the really big things where they use the CG, they really were able to get away with just it not looking photorealistic like it really needed to, because he's just a big old glob of mercury doing whatever that does. We can make it look like whatever the fuck we want.
And
Whereas,
doesn't really
which I mean,
hold
it all looks great.
Except for the one part where he has to look like the floor turning into him. That part definitely doesn't hold together as well.
Yeah.
So I think that the one time where they have to do
A
photo
physical
match something.
thing, yeah.
A physical shift.
Yeah, but this was
Looks
like
weird.
basically creating a technology to get dinosaurs walking daylight.
Well, it still
In a field,
still
like-
looks really good.
Yeah,
And
like-
I mean that's definitely thanks to using CG in conjunction with live animatronics and stuff like that. Like mixing stuff like that. That's definitely a big part of it. But it, like, even the CG just still looks
Great.
Yeah.
It looks
Really
great.
good.
It looks like something they would create today. Actually, some of the stuff they create today looks worse than what they created because of the techniques they used.
Yeah. And so big tip of the hat to Phil Tippett, who was the I want to say his credit in the movie is dinosaur supervisor,
Or
which
like-
I love.
Yeah.
It's something to that
Or
effect.
dinosaur
where-
wrangler or both or something like that.
Something like that, to where like somebody screen grabbed it and was like, damn it, Phil, people died. You had one job.
That is something I would still put on my resume.
Yes.
This day. Like,
Dinosaur Wrangler.
dinosaur wrangler. I was the dinosaur wrangler on Jurassic Park.
So after Laura Dern and
By the way, we did not talk about Laura Dern enough.
Oh,
As-
she's
as a little-
oh my god,
yeah,
she's so cool.
I'm sorry. Like, she was my life goals and my first girl crush all rolled into one. Like, I was immediately like, that is who I'm going to be. I'm going to
and
be.
the way she just fucks with Alan Grant. Like,
Yeah.
The way
She-
she is just
like I said, she's life goals. Like, and it was so great. And granted, again, this is early 90s. Like, to have such a strong female character who was a main character just be there and be so great. It was cool.
yeah.
No, and Laura Dern, like she's
still a giant crush
really
nowadays.
awesome actor too.
Yeah.
Like anything I see her in.
Yeah,
I'm
just
just
to this day,
oh,
like
shit.
if I see
didn't know
Laura
she was there.
Dern
Oh.
You're like,
like
Laura
pop up
Dern.
in something, it's like, oh, I need to watch this
It's
now.
got Laura Dern.
Because I feel like of the two of them, Laura Dern is much more of a safe bet of like, this movie is probably watchable.
Probably decent.
Yeah. So there's
Trying to think of stuff he's been in recently that I've been like, oh, I really liked him in that.
I really liked Sam Neill.
Yeah.
I really liked him in Thor Ragnarok.
I did too.
And Hunt for the Wilder People is actually a really great movie.
I don't think I've seen that. I have not
That's,
seen that one.
directed by Taika Waititi, which
Oh,
is
really?
Oh,
why-
okay, never
yeah.
mind. I gotta watch it because it's
Well,
Taika.
because he's from Australia,
New Zealand.
Yeah.
New Zealand. So there's only like 50, as Peter Jackson has said, there's like 50 people in New Zealand, so you got to get them all.
in one movie.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh, so yeah, Hunt for the Wilder People. I think it's on. It should be on. I watched it on Hulu, and I think the last time I looked, it was still there. I think it's on. It's all over the streaming stuff. But yeah, it's a good Taika Waititi movie. So yeah, after Sam Neill and Laura Dern are introduced, you get introduced to a really great introduction for Sam Neill about what his character is like, where he physically harasses a grown woman in a small child's body / outfit.
So this has been a huge like point of debate of like who this person was. I don't have do you have an IMDb pulled up?
No, I can't get it. Pulled
Okay.
Up really.
But the person who plays the kid is an actor whose name I can never remember. And I'm honestly trying to think of like what. So the thing that I can call to mind right now that I have seen him in is he plays Stanley Kubrick in the Imagine Dragons music video for On Top of the World. It's that guy. Yeah, I know. Don't just don't.
Did you say?
just go with
Do
it.
we
Is that
remember
what-
what the kid's name is?
No, it's just
Kid.
Here's your IMDb.
Okay,
Have
yeah.
fun.
I'll say let me track him down real quick.
But so yeah, this little
but
little
100%
monologue
like
that
little
Sam
kid
Neill-
looked like a. There he is. Here he is. Whit Hertford.
I guess that was just one of those like urban legends that just gets repeated enough and people assume it's true.
Because that was one of the things. Like I remember, like when we watched it, like one of like the first time we watched. Because I must have been 8 or 9, probably.
Yeah, you guys were still trying to figure this out. When was the first time you watched this
I want to
movie?
say it had to have been some point around then.
It had to have been on VHS, which back in the old days, kids, you had to wait like 13, 14 months after a movie left theaters before you could watch it
For
at
a regular
home.
movie. This movie was in theaters. I remember
Forever.
going in. We went and saw it a second time over Christmas of that same year.
And it came out in like early September.
Yeah.
So it was like 5 months late. This is back in the day when movies had more than 3 weeks.
To be in
in
a theater.
theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if they did well. They just kept going.
So it had to have been late 94.
Oh, okay. I totally know this actor.
Yeah.
He's in things all the time.
He's just one of those people that just like shows up for an episode of stuff, and you're
Like,
like,
yeah, I'll do
oh,
that.
that fucking
What
guy.
did I just watch? I gotta go find it.
Was it The West Wing?
It might have been West
I
Wing.
don't think actually trying to like comb my brain right now. I don't think he was ever in an
Okay,
episode
so
of The
he
West
was
Wing.
in Raising Hope, which
He
we
was in
watched.
Raising Hope. He was in an episode of Glee, at least one episode of Glee. But that's neither here nor there.
So this is one of the two scenes that were one of the shots kind of stood out to me as obviously being inside but supposed to be outside, where they're like dusting off the raptor skeleton, and just like I never was able to figure out where it was in relation to anything else, because it's obviously just like a little square that they built inside somewhere and put some big lamps on it. So like when I was, growing up watching it, I was always confused about how that connected in with the scene
site
immediately.
itself.
Yeah. So like, because then you have the shot of the raptor skeleton, which you never find raptor skeleton. Like you never find dinosaur skeletons where they're just like laying
perfectly
out there.
preserved,
Yeah.
just,
Like
all
every bone
together.
is there. Because it cuts immediately from that to Sam Neill standing up, but like the lighting is different. Like everything's.
Yeah. So that was one of the things. We are not meant to infer that he was at that exact site, right? He's like up on a hill, and they found it down on the hill.
Or was that a second velociraptor that was in the exact same pose, like 100 yards, 200 yards away?
Because they also another thing is they've, at the point of like when the movie shows the dinosaur, it has been unearthed. They do not need to shoot a radar into the ground to find it, but then they go and shoot a radar into the ground to see a skeleton.
Yeah.
That's to make sure the one you unearthed is dead.
Like, no, you know you found it. You don't need. I mean, I get the fact that what they're doing is they're 3D mapping it so that they don't necessarily have to dig it up. But y'all know you're still gonna dig it up.
Yeah, like the spatial, and that's kind of something that happens a few times in this movie, where the spatial relations of things aren't always super clear, because they have to run back to where they have uncovered the skeleton, because the helicopter comes down and is blowing dirt on it, but it doesn't seem to be the way they were coming from when they went to the radar shooting thing. So it's a little
like where that tent is in relation to the rest of the site. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a little unclear.
Yeah.
So there's a helicopter comes in. That's when we're introduced to the next legend of screen and film.
David Attenborough. Ah, fuck.
His brother, right? Richard Attenborough? I think it's or is it spelled different? It's spelled different, isn't it?
No, they're related. I don't remember what the relation is though.
Yeah. Richard Attenborough was a legendary film star
/
before this
director.
point. Yeah. Directed Gandhi right before this.
Yeah. Gandhi, what was that?
Was that 92?
91 or 92?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Gandhi? Why do I always think that Gandhi came out in like the mid 80s?
Because it kind of looks like that.
Of what was the one about?
The one, because there's the one, the Cry Freedom, and I always for some like not trying to fall into a trap right now.
Careful, there's mines everywhere.
But like of like bioflicks that came out, like I think confuse when I always flip those ones, and I always think that they came out either closer or like way more in a time than the one they actually did.
Are you thinking of The Golden Child? Is that what you're doing here?
The Eddie Murphy movie? Or there's also
I'm trying to think of what came out in like the mid to late 80s that would have imagery or anything that might invoke.
I don't know. It's also just because I think because I have never actually seen Gandhi all the way through, and I've never like done that much research into the movie that I just never remember when it came out. I just always associate it with the era of the 80s, and so just assume it came out in the 80s.
So back to Jurassic Park.
Jurassic
Which did
Park
not come out in the 80s.
It did not come out in the 80s.
The other thing that happens in this movie too that I kind of miss in movies is that like the title screen kind of jiggles around a little bit, which I kind of like, where it was obviously a thing that they went back and shot on film later, and like I don't know, just like the way the camera will move unintentionally or things move like that you just don't get anymore, because people just go in and just computerize it so that all the frames are
everything looks very clean and crisp, and
it's like sometimes like I don't know, I think that's why I get excited when you get some handheld stuff, which I know people weren't excited about, like
natural flaws and stuff like that, stuff that just kind of happens.
I mean, you had like the Paul Greengrass who went overboard for a while, where it went into like not just handheld but like really shaky, to cover the fact that you have Liam Neeson trying to be a 20-year-old action star. Richard Attenborough comes, destroys their site, covers
he does.
Covers Laura Dern and Sam Neill in brown sugar. It's supposed to be sand, but it like doesn't act like sand. It's like too powdery.
It's just flour.
Yeah, it's like some brown flour that they throw on their faces.
Yeah, they're just eating a bunch of donuts. They're like, oh fuck.
The other thing that Steven Spielberg does in this too that you don't see in big action movies is that there's a lot of overlapping dialogue where people will be having conversations while someone else is talking over top of it. So you'll have like, you have to really pay attention and listen to like 3 different simultaneous conversations, because like Richard Attenborough is doing his spiel, but then Laura Dern and Sam Neill are also like having conversations between each other. So like just little bits like that, which like
which is what happens in real life, so it makes it more realistic.
Yeah.
And
that was the
Spielberg's
thing. Like
really good at doing,
really good at catching stuff like that.
Yeah.
Another thing that was pointed out to me recently too is that he doesn't cut unless he needs to, at least in like his 80s and 90s films. So like there's a lot of shots where they just like go on for as long as they're supposed to, and like he's not going to just like super fast cut Bohemian Rhapsody style to get a performance out of everybody, because you know, the scene with Laura Dern, like Sam Neill comes into the thing and there's no cuts. It's just like the camera does its movements, people come in and out of the frame, and like it's not something you realize until like
You watch a movie that has hyper fast cuts.
yeah, like so many big action movies are so hyper cut nowadays that it's like, yeah, it's nice to watch a movie where a scene will play out, and then when a cut happens, you're like, oh, here's something new to look at,
Yeah.
instead of just being assaulted in your eyes by the jump cuts. So Richard Attenborough invites Sam Neill and Laura Dern out to an island. He's kind of cagey about what it is, but
It's
also
a
not
nature
at the same
preserve.
time. Yeah,
It's a thing.
he's like, it's right
There's-
up your alley.
Do you like dinosaurs?
Dude, yeah. I mean, if he had just let Jesus, if he had led with that, I feel like they would have been like, oh,
Hold on a minute. What?
what are we? What is due? But it just being very like vague about it.
So this is also one of my favorite jokes from the movie is here when Richard Attenborough as John Hammond is talking about something, and Sam Neill says, "What are those?" Oh, he's saying that there's attractions that'll delight everyone, especially children or whatever. And
Oh,
Sam's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, what are those?" And Laura Dern's like, "Little people."
Smaller versions of adults.
Yeah, so that's a good. I'll just have Jonathan do all the quotes because even though I've watched it most recently, he's memorized.
I
the whole
remember
thing.
it.
He lived the Jurassic Park.
So the next character we're introduced to is Ian
Ned?
Malcolm, played
Is
by
the sex pot of the movie. Let's be
Is that where he
honest.
comes in?
Is that where he comes in?
yeah,
Because they're
it
on the
cuts-
helicopter.
It
by
cuts
this
from
point,
that to a
right?
helicopter.
And he's there just like,
Oh,
Yeah.
Sexing it up in the
why do I for some reason, okay, so obviously
you have like a scene in between.
I have
all of
the
that.
Nedry introduction for some reason in my
Oh,
brain goes here.
Is that's what I was wondering too. Like, is that where
Yeah,
they bring him in, or do they jump to that so soon?
I'm not. He's in there somewhere. I think he might be F.
Because once they get to the island, they're on the island.
Yeah. So he that's the next scene.
Yeah, I think so. I think they come on like once they're on going to the island. He is then there preparing for
Yeah, putting shaving cream on pies and
Yeah,
watching
because
Jaws
once
on his, idea. Like,
because once they I'm trying to think now.
he's around. That's the next scene.
That is the next scene.
Yeah, because then you have not John Lithgow comes and gives him a briefcase full of money. As
Dodson.
Dodson.
We got Dodson here.
Who's actually
nice hat.
You're trying to look like a secret agent.
a little piece of trivia that Dodson, I think he's Dodgson in the book. I think he just pronounces it weird in this movie, perhaps.
Probably, yeah.
But actually, that is actually the main villain. But Dodson is actually the villain in the novel for the Lost World Jurassic Park, which we'll get to later.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so he actually comes back. So actually, this would be a good time. I have read both books. So has anyone else read them?
I read the first one. I've read a number of times, and the second one little bit unimpressed with, but
Yeah. We'll get there.
I have not read the books, which is surprising if you know me at all to hear me saying, but it's mainly because I usually get disappointed with one media or the other if I do read the book and watch the movie. And so I choose not to a lot of the time on things that I super love, like Jurassic Park, because I just don't want to be disappointed either way.
It definitely threw me off as a kid. That just but it also turned me into like a Michael Crichton fan.
Yeah.
That also left me really disappointed in everything. I wanted every book to be Jurassic Park after that, and I wanted every movie based on his work to be Jurassic Park. Nothing ever lived up to that. So
yeah,
it was very.
Let's see
the books.
But
so
I don't read books, so
you don't read, do you?
I don't know how to read.
He will read some books.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like so when I do read a book and it is a book that like I almost said when it's a book that's based on a movie. When it's a book
they do have those.
Yeah, when it's a book that has a movie adaptation, I am the weird person in that I have to watch the movie first so that I know what I am visualizing when I read the book. I am not the best at like world building when I read a book in my brain.
Visualizing.
Like I don't visualize it that well when I just read it. But like, so when I read the just like the Hunger Games,
Only Catching Fire.
Only Catching
No,
so when
I
read all three of them, but I had already seen, I think when I read it the first movie
you
was
had
for
seen
sure
Hunger
out.
Games.
I had seen the first movie, and so I was like, oh, okay, I know what at least what the movie thought all of this stuff should look like. And so I was able to just read the book and be like, that's what it looks like, as opposed to now imagine an island. Now imagine that island has dinosaurs. Now imagine what those dinosaurs look like.
I'm sorry, you couldn't imagine an island with dinosaurs?
I get that.
I'm just saying, like, that's as broad strokes. I'm just saying, like, I don't do the best at like world building myself when I'm trying, or like self-regulating my world building when I'm reading a book. I have read books that don't have movie adaptations, and so I've had to just.
I feel like for especially right now that there are more movies that are based on a book or a series of books that follow more closely to what the book actually happens in the book.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot easier to do, but with something
This is
like
not
Jurassic
that
Park,
book.
it is like, so did you see Jurassic Park? There are dinosaurs in this too.
I feel like Dune does that too. I haven't
Yeah,
really read.
Dune is kind
is
of-
very like that. Have you seen Dune? Any of the Dunes? This isn't that book.
I feel like the series
dirt.
that is the best to watch the movies first is Lord of the Rings, because I wouldn't have been able to
my
get through
God.
it if I didn't
I
have that
still can't.
that
I
visual in my head, because
try. I can read The Hobbit for days, but I cannot get past the first 75 pages.
The
of
only
LTR.
thing, and the only of the Lord of the Rings series of movies for me was Aragorn, and like what I pictured was not what was on screen. He just looked like a dirty man. And like there was like a mystique and badassery to him, like visually for me in the book, that when I saw that, I was just like, there's nothing handsome or cool or dark about this guy. This guy just looks like this guy looks like my dad.
This guy looks like a damn actor.
Like that's what I felt. But like, I think outside of that, I think I can see like, yeah, Lord of the Rings being. Like
I'm just
a good
impressed with
base
people
of,
who
like,
get past the first 75 pages of The Fellowship, because I am an avid reader and I will consume books in hours, and I can't do it.
Well,
I have tried.
when they
over
hit
and
Tom
over again.
Bombadil, like everything just.
I know, I have tried, and I'm like, this is too dense. It's just too dense.
I think the Two Towers is probably the worst for that, because half that book is just troop movements from location A to
Which,
B, and I was like,
I mean,
it's
it
a good thing I
really-
have this visual in my mind about what these things look like. 'cause
It's really good. I mean, like, it's really great to remember that Tolkien was not a novelist. This is not why he wrote these books.
Right.
And it helps you carry on a little bit. by the time he got to Hobbit, it was like, oh, thank God you figured this out a little bit. Let's read this book.
Well, I'm trying to remember because it's the Silmarillion is basically just an encyclopedia, right?
Yes, he created a language and then was like, what am I going to do with this
That is
now?
one of the hard parts about reading The Lord of the Rings is that there is a lot of like, what are these words?
Yeah.
Are these real? Like,
You
there's
need
so
the Silmarillion
much
next to you to be like, what is
Well, let me look this up real quick because I know like that got published as like a book, but it is not technically like it is not a novel.
It's not. No, it's an
It
encyclopedia.
is an encyclopedia
Of his
Story,
world,
not
of his language and his world
Yeah.
that he created. And then he was
Yeah.
like, well, now what do I do? I guess I'll write a book.
Because I remember like after the Lord
As
of
a
the Rings,
linguist,
like
I'll write a book.
after that trilogy of movies came out, like I remember seeing the Silmarillion at like Barnes and Noble, being like, "Hey, do you like Tolkien? You should read this."
No, don't
And-
read that. It's
yeah,
a
but-
dictionary, y'all.
That's cool.
It's a cool
I mean,
dictionary.
that's cool. Like more
like-
power to you.
It's like being like, oh, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a movie now. Let's go find that book. Yeah, that's just a novel of actually. It's an encyclopedia of the animals.
Just,
Like,
hey,
it is not a novel.
This is about
Not a-
Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, it's
And
where
you
to find them.
Yeah.
Which I was like, that's really what that movie should be more about. I want to know where these things are.
So speaking of Fantastic Beasts,
Dinosaurs.
Yeah. Way to bring it
We
back.
are the tangents
Way to bring
today.
it back. That was
So yeah, you have the introduction of Wayne Knight as Dennis Nedry.
Wayne Knight's so good.
Wayne
Wayne
Knight
Knight
is so
pre Atkins diet
yeah.
because like he's like
good for him.
yeah.
Good for him.
Good for him.
Hey, Wayne Knight, sponsor this podcast.
We
Thanks.
think you look great
Just
You're
come
doing
hang
real
out.
good.
Just come hang out
in our dining room.
in our dining room. Come,
Yeah.
hey, Wayne Knight.
So yeah, they go. So after that, Dennis Nedry scene is when they're on the helicopter. You meet Ian Malcolm, the legendary Jeff Goldblum.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So Laura Dern was like my first like girl crush, and then Jeff Goldblum. And I was like,
And then 15 minutes later, Jeff Goldblum's on screen. And you're like, oh,
oh, there will never be another man for me again. Hello, Jeff Goldblum.
Jonathan pulls off his face like, hi guys.
We're also reintroduced to Gennaro, the lawyer of the series, who did have a previous scene, but it's not.
Remember?
Nothing really happens.
Well,
in
what
it.
I would say about that scene, that specifically, I know we're not right now going into Jurassic World or anything like that, but that scene that he has with the miners, and by that I mean people who dig in mines and not people who are underage.
Guy.
God, fuck. But that sets
No, we
up
don't.
things
We
that
don't
are
fuck
like,
minors.
God damn it. That scene sets up things that like kind of come to fruition later. Like
Yeah.
why the kids are on the island. Their parents are going through a divorce, which he mentions in that scene. Like that's how you set up kids going to an island because their parents are going through a divorce.
You mean
Not just
having the kids say our parents are getting divorced in the middle of a train ride, and then it never comes up ever again?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is
We'll
exactly
get-
the thing
We'll
I'm
get
talking
to that. There will be screaming and table pounding later on, but for now we're gonna keep it calm.
Hashtag justice for Zara.
Let's just be chill right now.
Yeah, no,
Let's
that's
just-
fine. That's fine.
let's
That's
just be
fine.
Cool.
It's fine.
So they get to the island. There's some fun music. Some jeeps are driven. Then you
And
get,
it looks like the best amusement park you would ever go to in your entire life. Like, don't just be honest. We all wanted to go to Jurassic Park in that moment.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
It
I mean,
looks like the place that you would want to be, even if you didn't. I didn't like dinosaurs as a kid. Like, I'm sure I know.
gasp.
Gasp. I'm sure I did. Like, at some level, all kids like dinosaurs a little bit. Like, they're cool, but like they weren't my thing.
yeah.
Especially by the time I probably watched this movie, which I'm sure I was a little older. I don't really remember the first time I've watched it. I've just always had seen it at some point.
That's kind of how I feel about it, honestly.
But I wasn't a big dinosaur kid. Like, it wasn't my life. And so I still remember seeing that scene and being like, that is just the coolest freaking place you could ever go in your entire life. I want to go to Jurassic Park now, please. Thank you.
Yeah. This scene also has the second of two scenes where they're supposed to be outside. but
but they're not.
it doesn't really look like is when everyone's going up to the front doors of the main facility, and it's obviously just like
A soundstage
with some, because they use like a white light too in this scene where everything's kind of like a bluish white. So but I mean, like nothing's perfect. So.
There are so many times. Something that I've thought about a lot, and it's a scene a little bit down the way, so I'll wait for it. But there are so many times in this movie where I'm just like, but what if you didn't use a soundstage though? Because you didn't when you initially shot it in the daytime. Why couldn't you show us?
Well, I think part of it was that when they're pulling up to the main facility thing, that was literally just painted cardboard that they had set up, and they didn't build the whole set there because, like a lot of the exterior stuff is filmed in Hawaii, and I know there's a lot of. It's really hard to shoot there because they don't want to fuck up their ecosystems just for some movies that no one's going to remember.
Yeah, they're not building whole big things.
Yeah,
and they're not.
So I can understand why.
Wait a minute. Are you telling me they did not build a scale Jurassic Park on the island before? Mind blown.
So yeah, they enter the main facility. Then we're introduced to Tim and Lex. Who are
the aforementioned divorce kids?
Yeah, Hammond's grandchildren, who are American, even though he's Scottish. But
yeah, what the fuck's up with that?
His daughter. It was his daughter, I think, moved to America or some.
Right, because he was born in Scotland, and
at some point he's
Scottish,
right?
But outside of that, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and then he moved to America, met James Cromwell, and
we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
Not today, Satan. So yeah, we meet Tim and Lex. They get put in, who are essentially our damsels in distress in this film for the most part.
A little bit, yeah.
They have she has a couple of scenes that do something, but he doesn't really, which is,
I like Lex a lot. Like, I feel like she has her really annoying parts, but I really like her as this kid who is just like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. You guys are dorks.
In that aspect of it, the character is fine, but in the, like, what movie producers in the 90s think, air quotes, hackers are,
even that, like, I remember, like, my friends whose parents had computers, who used computers. Like, I remember them kind of being like that. I remember there's like,
it's definitely a more accurate representation of hackers than the film Hackers.
Yeah, because it's just the way she does everything,
because she just types on a computer and shit happens.
She's like, no,
that's what hacking is.
It's knowing how to run programs, essentially,
right?
Knowing how to type in the do DOS and whatever. So after that, we are introduced to Mr. DNA.
Good old Mr. DNA.
I just want to say this is a scene where we see behind them, you see little signage and everything, and one of those signs is for Jurassic Park Europe. And I really want to know what Jurassic Park Europe is.
Since there is no Jurassic Park America, since it's in Costa Rica island chain.
I want to know what that entails.
Well, I wonder
where that's set up.
Going into the lore a little bit, I wonder if that is like not necessarily a holdover, but like, because all of this stuff is basically, for lack of a better term, pre-production model. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that is a holdover from when Jurassic Park was going to be a mainland attraction.
I was going to say, like, what we see here is actually like Jurassic Park 2.0.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of a little bit of retconning that happens in the book and film following. But
so I wonder if that's just like one of those things where like, we need to tear down these posters eventually, but right now,
here's a cool little film.
That's like surface level bullshit that nobody cares about. Is, does the park run?
Right.
That's what we need to focus on. We have a skeleton crew. manning the park.
They still need They still need the theme music for the video because it's gonna go boom, 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 as Hammond says.
Like they haven't even hired a composer yet.
So, did Richard Attenborough do the voice of Mr. DNA, or is that just something that I always assumed in my head because he's like in the video and he's like doing? And also, is he going to be there for every? So, or is it just going to be like whoever's working that day, they're going to upload that video because he does his little presentation thing where he like copies himself and it's like, but Hammond wouldn't be there every single time.
I think that's one of those things of kind of showing like
what they could do with it.
Well, I think it's meant to show that like Hammond thinks he can do anything.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a Tower of Babel kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. It's like he thinks he is going to be able to be there for every ride.
Right.
That they are going to be cloning him because he's going to be there in person to show all of these people, this is my park. He's never not going to be the person being like, welcome to Jurassic Park. That's always going to be the role he plays.
Because he wants to be like P.T. Barnum, who's always in the center ring.
Yeah. He wants to be P.T. Barnum and Walt Disney. Like, he doesn't just want a statue of him holding a hand with a velociraptor, like waving at kids as they come in. He wants to literally be
stump hand.
Yeah, he literally wants to be the person like at the gate waving them in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what this scene is meant to be. It was supposed to like kind of lay the seeds of
subtle character development.
Yeah.
We don't not beat over the head with it.
I know. Movies used to do that.
Let's see. But yeah, so did he do the voice of
Mr. DNA?
Mr. DNA?
Mr. DNA. Mr. DNA. So for the longest time, I did not know that it was Mr. DNA because
it's Mr. Dunna.
Mr. Dunna. Because Richard Attenborough gets so excited when he sees him. He's like, "Ooh, Mr. Deedly!" And I was like, Mr. Deedly? Like little kid me is like, Mr. Deedly. Okay.
That's a weird name for him.
That's a weird name, but okay. But yeah, like it wasn't until like I was a grown ass adult and watched the movie probably with subtitles that I realized he
just
says
has a Scottish accent.
Mr. DNA. And I was like, that makes so much fucking sense. That the character who is made out of DNA is just Mr. DNA.
How old were you?
Probably like a solid 20.
By the way, it was not him. It was not Attenborough who did Mr. DNA's voice. It was a guy named Greg Burson.
There you go.
There you go. Because he had a dope ass Southern accent.
He did. His name was
Dinosaurs. I think that's why I always thought it was him because they both said it weird.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs.
Dino DNA.
They were trying to have that guy say it like Richard
For a second, I forgot the accent because mentioning him doing the voice, I started to put his voice in there in these lines, but it's that goddamn accent
from your blood.
So the next character, and I think the one character that's been done the most dirty by the two newest films.
Done him so dirty.
Yeah.
Oh crap! No,
poor BD Wong.
BD Wong playing Dr. Wu.
Yeah.
So the thing that I noticed a few watches back, and I actually noticed it more and more each time I watch, is that every time you see him, he's holding a clipboard and a pencil.
He's always erasing.
He's
something.
always erasing, or he has the eraser ready. He's never using the lead part of it. So like. When he's doing it, he's just doing like the whole page.
The whole page.
He's just like erasing the whole, which I think is like
he's trying to hide the evidence at all times.
I think that's like, I think that's something that was done on purpose because they want to clue you in. Like these people have no idea. Like,
no idea what
things
they're
are going to
doing.
go horribly wrong with the lead scientist like furiously erasing everything on an entire page of that he's written down.
That shouldn't be right.
that doesn't
Wait
make
a
any
minute.
sense.
2 + 2 is not 5. Shit, this whole thing's wrong.
The whole equation is off now.
And I think like turning him from a guy who's cluing you into that this company is going to shit the bed.
That they've just rushed everything.
I mean, they've turned him into like an evil scientist for some reason. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
He is the architect of destruction.
Yeah.
Was he in the beginning though, or do you think that that's where they've taken him? Like, is that
Taken
his,
is
no?
J.R.R. Tolkien.
It's most southern. Leave it alone. Is this where they've taken his character? Like, is that a character development that he has gone from being this bumbling scientist who introduces you to becoming the main scientist and the architect?
Absolutely sure they decided to
They just decided to do it.
Hey, he's willing to come back and do what can we do with him?
I think it's just that Colin Trevorrow had just a huge boner for the original Jurassic Park, and they wanted to connect them as much as possible. Let's see. So there's you see the raptor birth. Sam Neill gets real upset about that. We get reintroduced to Muldoon again. We get to see
Is this where he says nature finds a way during this?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the part where he's like, no, they're all female.
He's just like,
You dumb fuck. They're all lady dinosaurs. And he's like, ladies fuck.
Yeah, nature finds a goddamn way, y'all.
you're fucked.
Let's see. And then in the control room, we're introduced to Samuel L. Jackson in a bizarrely small role.
A very small role, but
For the time, though, I feel like it
wasn't. I think it was.
It was
this was
suited to
before-
him. Like,
generous.
yeah.
He'd only been in like 50 movies at this point in his career because he started in the 70s. He's been in like 200 something movies.
I'm trying to think because like what was
he's been in 314.
But
That's
I
the
mean,
number. So yeah, he was only in like the
He's
50
only been
to
an
60.
actor in 185. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
okay.
So yeah, he was only at like the 50 to 60 movie range by the time he was in this.
Yeah.
I think
But I
Pulp
don't think-
Fiction is what really put him over as like a
it
big
wasn't.
name.
He really hadn't been in something like of this level to put him on like, oh, Sam Jackson's in that.
we need
gotta-
to like cue up some Sam Jackson.
Oh,
in that
and
movie.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, I think is my big introduction to him.
Which that was like 95.
That was also
Yeah.
that and Pulp Fiction. I think A Time to Kill was
Shaft
93.
was 2000, by the way.
Well, it took 19 years to get the sequel to that.
Yeah.
So
He
yeah,
was also in episode 1.
Samuel L. Jackson playing Mr. Arnold, who gets done dirty later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Does he get a first name? He does. His name is Ray.
Yeah.
Is
There it
he?
is. It is.
Oh, he does say that. Hammond says that a few times. It's one
Yeah.
of those things where with like the overlapping dialogue and like not just like close up shot of Hammond saying a line and then close up like
Hi, Ray Arnold.
yeah.
Continue dialogue.
Yeah,
Where it's
in
just like-
IMDb, he's just Arnold.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
By
like
the
one of
way,
those
Loaded Weapon was the year before.
Oh,
I love that
That's
movie.
what he's.
Loaded Weapon.
I'll-
That's what
There it
skyrocketed
is.
him.
screw the Naked Gun movies. Loaded Weapon is where it's at.
Yeah.
In my at-home recreation of Jurassic Park, for some reason, I had this Grover that always sat in as
Sam Jackson.
I don't know why. So now, like Grover in my head talks like Sam Jackson, unless
Sam Jackson had been acting for 20 years before Jurassic Park. By
Yeah.
the way.
Hot damn.
Damn.
I mean, to be fair, like that's not uncommon for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, nowadays it's just that list is full of Law and Order episodes. So.
Yeah.
I
No,
missed
he did some of those before Jurassic
Yeah.
Park. too.
I missed the 6 Degrees of Law and Order back in the day. Like literally, you name a person, they were probably on like one of the first 15 seasons of Law and Order.
1991, Sam Jackson was in an episode of Law and Order.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Dinosaurs,
That's
everybody.
dinosaurs.
No, we're going to
Dinosaurs.
talk about Sam Jackson now.
Sam Jackson played the Velociraptor.
Actually, there's a guy in IMDb who is Raptor number 1. His name is Ripley Walker, and he was Raptor number 1.
Ripley Walker. Raptor. Number 1. Ripley.
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 Rip.
Ripley.
Ripley.
Rip.
Holy shit. What is happening right now?
So they go on a tour.
This is the Ripley podcast.
They go on a tour. Ian Malcolm tries to steal Laura Dern away from Alan Grant, one of
Except
the.
for they're not a couple.
Yeah.
They're not a couple
Right.
ever.
Well,
which
they
is,
It's like alluded to.
Kind of.
Is it?
Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of on you, the viewer,
To
to
decide.
assume they are.
Well,
I always
Ian
just thought they
Malcolm-
were work colleagues, and she definitely looked at Ian Malcolm and was like, "You're gross." Thanks, though.
when the power goes out, Grant and Malcolm are sitting in the truck and they're talking, and Ian Malcolm's like, I'm gonna get all up in there later, and then he's like, unless you guys are like, and then Alan Grant goes, yeah.
But even then, like, that doesn't really feel like a full like confirmation that they are in a relation. There's nothing else like throughout the movie that really kind of says like, even when they like meet back up after, oh my God, you might have been killed by a dinosaur. I'm so happy you're alive. Like even that, like,
I mean, we only see it from far away where she like jumps on him and they're like spinning around.
Yeah.
but
It's,
like,
it's definitely one of those like sitcom
Will they, won't
asexual
they?
relationship things where like a couple, they've been married for a while and they're just like, they don't want to be near each other too much. Right, guys? Right, guys?
Oh, I see what you're doing.
So let's see. They go find a triceratops and they talk to Dr. Harding, which is he related to Julianne Moore's character? We might have to dive into this again later.
Oh,
Quite the coincidence. The
yeah.
two Dr. Hardings end up on these islands.
I completely forgot that was her name.
I feel like that's.
I think part of it is a holdover from the books.
Yeah.
Because I think this Dr. Harding plays a bigger role.
Yeah,
Like he's in actual scenes and stuff later on after. Because I think up to this point, it's pretty, it's almost the same. Like there's some stuff like in Costa Rica where there's a dinosaur attack at the beginning of the book. But I think they stick pretty close to like the general events that happen up to this.
Well, I think if I remember reading correctly, I think Spielberg already got on like the script writing and everything like that as Jurassic Park itself was being because
Michael
like,
Crichton was writing the pilot for ER
with Spielberg.
with Spielberg.
Yeah.
And there's like, so what are you working on, Mike? And he's like, well, I got this dinosaur thing I might do. And Spielberg's like, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Let's do dinosaurs.
And he was
Yeah, so
like,
it was like-
and then give me the rights to do the movie.
Yeah. So like both of the movies were really created
about just
simultaneously.
how a nice little connection to Spielberg like sets you for life sometimes.
Like when you're J.J. Abrams and you walk onto Universal Studios and like, hey, Mr. Spielberg, you want a coffee? And then 30 years later, you run every franchise.
You're just fixing his nice, pool or porch. What was Harrison Ford doing? He was like cleaning his pool or something like that. And he was like, that guy. I need to cast that guy in
I think
a
he was like
movie.
building a chair when
'Cause
he
was a
met George
carpenter.
Lucas. Yeah,
was
and he
he?
was like, hey, you want to build sets for my movie? And then he's like, well, we need some people to screen test. You want to come on and do some screen tests with Mark and Carrie? And then
Was
and
it
then he
Lucas
put
that
him-
he found? I thought it was
Yeah.
Spielberg that he knew.
no, because he was
He was in American Graffiti.
That's the one. Yeah, so he was in that for like 2 seconds, and then he ended up in Star Wars, which does not have dinosaurs, unlike
does not.
Jurassic Park.
I was going to Spielberg.
Hold on a minute.
So yeah, you have your Dr. Harding connection there, which is like I said, a character that's a bigger role in the books or in the first book. Let's see. So they continue their tour. Power goes out in front of the T-Rex paddock.
This is one of the biggest. I realize there. Spielberg has gone on record and just been like, yeah, I just made a choice. But the T-Rex paddock literally makes no sense.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
not
No,
at
yeah.
all.
Because in one scene,
Yeah.
It's a cliff.
because in one scene, the dinosaur
He
is
just
able to
walks
just
right
walk
out.
right out of it. And still the same
Yeah.
scene, just 5 minutes later, it's a fucking sheer cliff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And T-Rex is not that tall.
So that was one of the things that I was thinking, not at the time as a kid. Like as a kid, it was like, wait, no, but didn't like have the
I remember like, oh, he must have come up on the hill over here.
Right? Like
This
trying to
is where
like
they go.
logic it,
Yeah.
right? But
I just always thought, why do they have such a tiny fence for that giant ass dinosaur? Because he just like literally is like, step.
I mean,
was
that
like,
makes
what?
more sense than having the T-Rex 100 feet below where the cars are driving by to look
They
at
have
it.
to get
Yeah.
out, look down.
Yeah.
So like,
And he just
so
grabs it
this
with his
this is one of those things where
hands.
if they initially had, when they're doing the drive-by, when they're on the island in that set, if they had built something on behind the camera, essentially, because we never see anything that direction, that's where the cliff should have been. And then that way, when you have the T-Rex
Come
take
at
the
you this
cars,
way.
you have to take the cars off of the track and then start pushing them. He pushes them that direction, and that's where the cliff is, as opposed to pushing them into its own paddock, which is now completely unviewable from the road where you are locked in the car.
yeah. On the other hand, it doesn't really matter because it's such a sweet
It's
scene.
a fucking great scene.
No,
great.
it's
It's
so
great.
fantastic.
So yeah,
The first time you see the water start to jiggle with the T-Rex is just one of those like, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be so good.
Well, yeah, like I mean, even watching it to this day, like when it's looking in and they're like the kids are just like fucking with the flashlight and like
Mhm.
Jesus Christ, like that whole scene, like there's still an anxiety that sits in my stomach with that. Like I know it's gonna be fine. I know everything that's gonna happen. They're being done. I know it's but there's still like something triggers me in there. That's just like
I mean,
That's just one of the. It's one of those classic perfect.
It's
scenes
great. It's
that,
great.
like,
and you also wanted to slap the shit out of Tim because like, what are you doing there, buddy? Just turn it off. Your hands are right. He's just,
Yeah.
you can't.
Your
figure-
hand is on the button, my
Yeah.
dude.
turn the damn flashlight off.
I don't know how it works.
It's
I don't
also,
know how lights work.
It also just makes me giggle if we don't move. It's like no.
Oh,
Oh.
He already
At
knows.
the time.
He already knows you're goddamn there. He stared at you with his eyeball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just gonna eat this now. You haven't gotten out.
He'll just think that they absorbed into the car, and they are now the car.
the car is it?
Yeah.
It's a shell. It's a
So Grant and Malcolm try to distract the T-Rex, and
yeah, dude.
Malcolm ends up killing Gennaro through his
Yeah.
doofery
yeah, he
of
does.
which it took me the first few times I watched it probably because it was on VHS and like really crappy like footage where I didn't notice that it was actually in Malcolm on top of the T-Rex head flying through the air.
Oh yeah. Like it just like it tucks his nose like right under him and just like throws him.
tosses him.
Throws him
He doesn't
like-
just suddenly like fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's chasing him, and for some reason, instead of biting him, it like scoops him between the legs and flings him off to the side. So this little shack falls over, and then we get the first named character death in the film, which is Gennaro, who had the temerity to be a lawyer. Goddamn.
God damn.
No,
Blood-sucking lawyer.
His greatest sin was wearing that suit with shorts.
And then tucking that shirt into those shorts. I mean, his main sin was running away from the children when they at the first sign
yeah,
of danger.
that one,
Yeah.
So
that
that's
one,
that. I
for
mean,
sure.
I mean, it wasn't even the first sign of danger. Nothing was happening, and he was like,
Fuck
a
this."
noise.
I gotta get out.
I gotta go.
Fuck you, bitches. Fuck them kids.
Fuck
Let's
them
see.
kids. Yes.
So Laura Dern gets back to the command center and talks to Hammond. And this is when they find out that Dennis Nedry has put into plan a thing where he shuts off all the power in the facility at some point or one part or another.
Was he just trying to commit mass murder? I mean, I know he was trying to like sneak out under the radar, but
Which is
like,
why everything was timed.
yeah, but it's just like, do you not realize what's
Well-
gonna happen? You were literally doing the security to a dinosaur park.
Everything was rushed because of the storm, though, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
that call, and it's like, we need to do this now. Like,
Yeah.
so he just,
And
'cause I feel
also-
like he didn't plan to shut everything off just like
Yeah.
that. It was, but then it does.
And also, like, they don't. You find out later on they don't actually know how all of the power stuff works because like they turn off all the power to reboot the computers, but they didn't realize that doing that fucks with the breakers. Like, oh, I must have flip the breakers. It's like you Somebody should probably know what they're doing around here.
What is this?
Who set this up
Were
and
you
why
guys
did
ready?
they leave you?
Yeah, and it's like,
These are clearly not the people who set up this goddamn park. Where is that person?
yeah, like when Richard Attenborough's like, hey, all major theme parks have their ups and downs, or is that who says that?
Yeah, it's Richard Attenborough when he's talking about like, oh, when Disneyland opened, nothing worked.
Yeah, and then Muldoon's like, well, when Pirates of the Caribbean shuts down, doesn't eat the tourists.
Ian Malcolm.
Ian Malcolm.
Is it Ian Malcolm?
It's Ian Malcolm.
Huh. Is he?
Okay.
Because that's when
Is that later? That's later on.
It's later on when they're in the bunker.
He's getting stitched up and everything.
Yeah.
He's like laying sexually with his shit.
Yeah.
That's a weird conversation to have at that point in the movie. I think that's why I assumed it was earlier.
Well, it's because that's when
Because they get
Laura
out there
Dern
pretty
and Bob
quick.
Peck go to like
Get him. Check
figure
on
out
everybody.
what's going on. Because Sam Jackson hasn't come back from switching the breakers again. And so they're talking about like how like nothing in the park is working right. And that's when he was like, oh, well, when Disneyland opened, nothing worked.
When Disneyland first opened, Walt Disney's grandchildren disappeared with a bunch of man-eating dinosaurs too. That is a weird place to put that scene. Now that I'm thinking about it. So anyway, Dennis Nedry, there's a thing that happens in his scene. So he gets a bunch of dinosaur DNA
His little canister.
in his little canister
Little
of
gel caps.
Barbasol.
Little.
Sponsor the podcast.
Hey, Barbasol. Are you still a company?
They were a few years ago.
I think
Okay.
so. I think I still see
If-
the
if you
cans.
need
Like they have not
unscented
changed their
cans of
Oh.
shaving gel
If you-
or cream.
You wanna?
Hey, Barbasol. Come sponsor this podcast.
We didn't know if you were still in business, but
You want a company that's gonna stick by their design and logo?
Hasn't changed in 30 years. Hey, Barbasol, if you want people to know you're still around, we'll let them know.
We just bought some. Like we just bought some. Yeah.
So Dennis Nedry takes his dinosaur DNA capsules in his Barbasol can and heads out onto the muddy roads. There's a big storm brewing at this point, and so as he's like driving around without any heat on in the Jeep, apparently because his glasses are all
on the
fogged up.
defroster, dude.
The windshield's all frosted. I don't know. Maybe Jeeps don't have defrost. I know they're kind of shitty vehicles.
Maybe they
Hey,
gotta.
Jeep.
Hey,
Hey,
Jeep.
Jeep.
Fuck off.
Put some goddamn defrosts in your vehicles. I know they do now, but
It
back
might- I
then
mean,
it was
it's-
still like the
It was
mash
also like it was
style
a
of-
cloth top and
yeah.
like
He's
what?
right. Again, this is all being like there wasn't time to.
There
like,
was
plan
not
this out and
time.
work
Like
this
you're
out.
not like checking your lights, making sure the rear view's all good. Throw the defroster on. Ooh, my God! Make sure I flip on the rear defroster too.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I throw it into reverse and just calmly pull out of here.
So going full speed, either 60 miles an hour, which the movie wants you to think, or 25, which is what the movie shows you miles an hour that he's going. He's like staring at something off screen and crashes through a sign. He can't remember what it. At different
Because-
points, he's looking at different things, trying to figure out where he's at.
because he's trying to look through the pitch black jungle, being like, "Where am I supposed to go?" Like the road. The road is where you're supposed
Yeah.
to go.
Stay there.
Follow the
Stay
road.
on that.
Just follow it.
So he ends up going off the road onto like a little waterfall
Way
thing.
off the road.
Yeah.
So before he even gets to the waterfall, he crashes into a road sign that is by no construction standard. Like nobody's just like, we'll just put a screw dead center so that if anything vaguely touches it, the direction of the sign is wrong.
The person that designed the spinner for the Game of Life was like,
Yeah.
hey, let me make these signs for you. Just a little thumbtack with a circular.
They were in the middle of just setting it up right then. Storm came in.
Like, oh, we
Again,
gotta
fuck. We gotta go.
still not dead center. You put one at the top and then run.
I was starting. I had to hold it up.
They told me it needed 3 screws. I did the center one first.
Obviously, that's the easiest one. Then you get kind of. Anyway, so yeah, he spins his little paper plate road directional thing. Ends up on a waterfall and
That's the direction you should go.
yeah.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Steven Spielberg does a thing to Wayne Knight here that makes me cringe every time.
Is it the sound effect?
It's the slide whistle when Wayne Knight falls, whoop, and he slides down the waterfall.
So that's one of those things where like little kid me was like, was that his shoes or did they fucking put a sound effect in there?
Because is it after he grabs the cord already? Like he's getting the hitch to like.
I think it's when he first gets out of the. Because by the time he's being killed, they take it more seriously.
Because I remember that sound, but I always assume it's because like he's pulling this and he slips and the thing.
I think he's pulled out a bunch of cable and he's going to go down the hill and then he cartoon slips.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I don't know. I gotta watch that scene again, but I feel like there's a connection to the tow cable and the sound and the slip. Like
Connection is?
He's a fat guy falling down.
You know what?
Big dumb fat guy.
He's a big fat guy. This is what it sounds like when a fat guy falls down.
Sounds like a slide whistle.
Maybe Spielberg at the time was just so ingrained in like Hollywood that like he had not seen a fat guy fall without that sign in 15 years.
I mean, This was like pretty soon on the heels of 1942, which I feel like I have not seen it, but from what I've heard, it's like a live action cartoon, like a live action Warner Brothers cartoon. So maybe he was still in that mindset of, hey, a fat guy's falling down. We need where's my sound effect right here? Yeah. So we find out that he apparently crashed into a Dilophosaur pen or somehow.
I think the dinosaur just got out because he's on the road.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah, it's hard to tell exactly.
Well, I'm sure there's like service roads inside the pens because they don't have gyro balls to drive around inside the.
I just always assumed it was that he was on because the road that he's trying to get down to is the road that leads to the dock.
The one that he coincidentally, which this isn't the last time that Steven Spielberg will have a character accidentally end up where they need to be after crashing. Yeah. But this is probably the less egregious.
Also, just breaking down the anatomy of this crash, when the Jeep stops, it has hit a giant mud bank and has not driven over a log. When he gets out of the truck, he is at the top of a waterfall, no mud bank, and is now stopped on a log.
No, there you go. Plot hole. Call us Steven.
So it's just another one of those things that like doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, like doesn't make the movie any worse. But like
it's weird.
It's weird.
If you sit and try to deconstruct it, but
like it's easy to just have the Jeep hit a log and then just like be upended.
That's what it was.
He literally goes down a little like incline, hits a bunch of mud, and then it's like, oh, I'm stuck on a log.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Is that what that is?
I do like the idea that at this point the power has been out long enough that shit is just starting to get out.
Yeah.
Like don't ever turn the power off. Just don't.
Don't do it.
So he gets spit on and eaten by a Dilophosaurus, who somehow sneaks around him while he's like he does fall down a little bit, but he doesn't. If he had slid all the way back down, it would have made more sense. But he falls over. It doesn't eat him. It decides to sneak into the
Jeep and be
like,
hey, buddy,
and then wait for him to get in.
I call shotgun.
Wanted to be friends, and then he totally ghosted him.
It's like it really sucks that it's raining so much out here. I want to get inside where it's nice and dry. So that's R.I.P. Wayne Knight.
R.I.P. Wayne Knight.
Jurassic Park.
Nedry. He's the best thing in every video game that character shows up in, every Jurassic Park video. He is just the most annoying best thing.
So I know Jonathan and I have played the original Nintendo Entertainment System NES Jurassic Park. I've also played the Super Nintendo version, which is much worse because
I'm in the SNES one. Like is up there for me.
The only thing about the Super NES version is that they didn't know how to do first person shooters on consoles yet, and they really tried to do that.
That is really weird and really.
I mean, because they wanted to do the Wolfenstein thing,
and
it
definitely looks,
but they hadn't.
Like they're trying to do that.
But that was on computer, where this is like a really stiff D-pad.
And I can't remember when the SNES Doom came out in relation to this, but I mean, it was done.
Yeah.
So
This could have been like a trial run of, can we do this?
it could have been just like,
But only for
well,
like
we're
30
gonna-
seconds so people don't
but
get pissed.
Right. Like that's its saving grace on there, is that the segments are usually really short.
Yeah.
But then the other problem is that you usually have to go back and do that fucking short segment again. But I do stand by the music of that
Yeah.
is fantastic.
I mean, definitely.
if it had a save feature to that game, I think it would be remembered much more fondly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the thing
Because-
that pissed me off when like playing that game, is that I had to restart it every time, as opposed to, oh, I made it to this point in the game, I can save, come back, like, because I've only ever made it to
The T-Rex attack? The first one.
You can just go straight to that.
the farthest I've ever made it is to the rafting portion of the game, where you're trying to go up the river and like brachiosaurs just like pop out of the river every once in a while and just fucking murk you.
Which I think it's kind of cool that they obviously were making the game without having seen the movie, so they're just going off of what the book had.
Yeah.
So they
There's a
included the rafting scene where the
Yeah.
T-Rex is swimming up the river after him.
Yeah, there's definitely, playing any of those games, like, you find out that Alan Grant is much more of a mass murdering dickhead than
Yeah.
ever portrayed anywhere else. Like, he does not give a shit about dinosaurs at that point. He is just,
Yeah.
The video game version is the Arnold Schwarzenegger
Yeah.
version.
yeah.
Who's the next character to get it after? Is it Muldoon and Arnold? Because they get like a back-to-back reveals.
Yeah, pretty close. I
You
don't think there's anybody up until them.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
after that you have,
You have a nice long,
Grant and the children.
Yeah, you have a nice long segment
Yeah.
of them, like,
Meet the
going there.
Brontosaurus or the Brachiosaur.
We can say Brontosaurus now again, but none of those
Yeah.
are here.
But none of those are in the movie.
Then you have probably my least favorite sound effect in the movie, where they got really lazy and just
The snake.
pitched down a dog playing with a chew toy. Because when you have the T-Rex takes down the Gallimimus. Call back to the movie.
Gala.
I've never had that before where I couldn't think of a word except like syllable by syllable.
Yeah.
I've never had that. Like, if I can't remember a word, I can't remember the whole thing.
Or you say it wrong.
Yeah.
Like Gallimimus? No, that's not it.
And
Yeah.
then, and like after
I've never
you've
been
said-
like believe. That's the word I was trying to think of. That's like, once you get, at some point you just know the word.
commit. Like,
Yeah.
either you know it or you don't.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like when the T-Rex takes down the Gallimimus, it like has like a.
Oh
And I'm just like,
that's right.
That's obviously just the worst that I've seen of this, or I should say, heard of this, is in Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith, when they're bringing down that big giant cruiser down, and they landed at the airport. And it's, well, you have like which I have to assume it's a person because I don't know how else they got the thing where it's screeching to a halt, and it's literally just someone going as they're pulling up to the, and I was always like, they couldn't have gotten an actual, like, some sort of effect. They had to have someone go,
There's gotta be
like, making a breaking
There's gotta be like
sound.
a Wilhelm yell of like planes, like,
yeah, it's like, but they just got someone to make like, hey, what does it sound
Danny,
like when
get
someone
over
hits their
here.
brakes? And they just like played that. But yeah, this is like, obviously it's like they add a little bit of like,
Well, I think
They pitched it
Spielberg
down a
has
little bit.
even said like, I just recorded my dog playing with his toy.
yeah, and it's like, we can tell, Steve,
Yeah.
we can tell. So yeah, they watched the T-Rex attack a Gallimimus. Then they go to the fence.
Which that is such a good kind of like callback scene of like, even though you might feel like you were just in this giant island, that thing can be anywhere.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of, I don't think it was in today's industry that would have been a like $5 million reshoot of being like, oh yeah, we brought that dinosaur back at the end of the movie. We should put a scene in the middle somewhere where we use it to be like, oh, it just pops up.
Remember.
Yeah. But it's like, no, that was already in their budget because that's just the movie they were making. This thing could be anywhere and you will run into it.
Yeah. So yeah, they're climbing up the electrified fence, which follows one of my other favorite bits where Sam Neill throws the stick at the electrified fence and he's like, "Oh, power must be off," and he grabs it and just starts screaming.
Which is that's not how sticks work.
No, you can.
Yeah,
it would. It would. I can.
Would it make a reaction?
I can personally say that if a dry piece of wood hits two electrical things, it will burst into flames.
What are you doing?
I have an old tree outside of where I live that falls on power lines and causes the power to go out, and right before bursting into flames directly over top parked cars. So yeah, so
cool.
There would be the thing would happen.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
So yeah, while they're climbing over the fence, it's intercut with Laura Dern following after Samuel L. Jackson, who's trying to get the power back on. Then we get one of the most iconic movie lines where Muldoon does his clever girl bit.
Clever girl. That gets fucking owned.
Yeah. That's.
I mean, he knows it's gonna happen though. Like,
yeah,
when he's like standing there and she's like, "Hey, we're gonna make it." He's like, "No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Like,
we're being hunted.
You might.
Yeah.
Might.
That's a.
And if only he'd been at the dig site earlier, he actually might have been able to make it out because Grant tells everybody, "Oh, by the way, if you think you see them in front of you, they're actually coming around the side."
Yeah.
So Laura Dern,
called foreshadowing.
That is like a really great callback, like a use of like the raptors and just kind of like knowledge of just.
And actually,
why Grant is surviving this.
Yeah, way to commit to like an internal logic in your film.
Yeah.
Like not just having a character say something and then having that animal do not that behavior later on.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
So Muldoon dies. Laura Dern gets the power back on. Then she finds Mr. Arnold's arm that's somehow propped.
It gets flung onto her shoulder because one of the raptors is currently eating him and just throws that arm because this ain't where the good meat is.
But it kind of is though, because that's where like the muscle is,
right?
Unless Samuel is really into core and not so much arms, and he might not be an arm guy.
Also, the intercutting between them climbing over the fence and her turning on the individual park systems is one of the just most like anxiety-inducing things.
Not helped by that alarm that's going the entire time. Every time I cut
that alarm.
And one of my not really thinking it, but like one of those thoughts that you have where like they're climbing over the fence and you're just like, well, why didn't they just go under where the camera went? Because of the camera goes underneath. Yeah. Just go under there, guys.
Go under there.
Which I really like it a lot more when they do it practically rather than a lot of the times when they'll do that, but with CG, they'll just like go through a window or something, and you're like, you can see it turns into digital right before it goes to, and you're like, ugh, don't do that.
Don't.
David Fincher, one of his director crimes was he started that thing with Panic Room. I think it was like the first time they were like, yeah, there's this new thing that we tried. Because there's like a thing where he like goes through a window at one point where he's like, hey, we can do that now. And then,
but they did it practically in Citizen Kane.
Yeah.
So just do it.
Yeah. Let's see. So she finds Mr. Arnold. And this was always one of those things where people had arguments about where Laura Dern hurt her ankle. And I guess there was a deleted scene where she like jumps onto something and twists her ankle. But I'd always just assumed it was because
she hurts her ankle from trying to close a door against like a raptor. Yeah.
But apparently there is a deleted scene there where she like had hurt it another way.
Is it during the like her little trapeze through the jungle bits there?
No, it's when she's escaping from the from the power room.
Okay.
Because she's running through that, but then after that she like drops her flashlight and is dragging it along the floor, which is always one of those things where I'm just like, just pick it up real quick.
Just
like pull the cord out of your
Yeah,
thing.
it's like, just put it down. So she gets out of the thing, and we get like one of the big Laura. This is why you hired Laura Dern to be in this movie and not just someone that can scream and run, where she has like a complete total emotional breakdown
after she slams the door.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, I feel it. Like I'm right there with you.
Yeah, that and when she sees Sam Neill again, or like those are the two scenes where like you couldn't just get anybody to be in that role.
Yeah.
So everybody convenes back at the main facility center, including a couple of raptors. And then you have the famous kitchen scene.
Oh, the kitchen scene.
Which is, yeah, that was watching that as a kid was just like, I am not completely convinced these kids aren't gonna die.
Yeah.
Like I am terrified right now for
So
them.
this is a scene that always comes to mind because I remember watching it. One of the first times I was watching it as a kid, we were kind of having a discussion of like our mom thinking the movie was too scary for us.
When I was 8 and you were 5, or probably
Yeah. And what I was defining in my head at the time of like scary versus like what she was as a parent. Because in my head, like the scary stuff was the dude getting eaten by a T-Rex. Like,
Right.
oh, that's scary. He got eaten. Whereas like, no, the scary thing is the kids being trapped in the kitchen with a dinosaur, but like little kid me is like, they're going to be fine. That dinosaur is cool.
Yeah.
It's like, I did not have that like, oh my God, they might kill a kid in a movie, right? Spielberg might just like go rogue and kill a kid.
Might go Stephen King and actually kill the kid.
Yeah.
And I think
they were the same person the whole time.
This scene is really where I think you have to have someone like Steven Spielberg, who started off in the horror genre. I think that's why this movie works a lot better than a lot of the ones afterwards, because he had not really done a big action. He wasn't a big action movie guy before. I think this was really like his first big
like blockbuster
action. And even then it's like mostly like
the movie isn't really
tension.
that like
It's all tension
it's a thriller more than anything.
Yeah.
It's like when thinking of what could possibly improve any of the new Jurassic Park movies is like, don't go into it thinking it's going to be a big action movie. Have it be essentially like a character think piece that also has dinosaurs, which is what this movie is.
Yeah.
Well, this one definitely feels much closer in that respect to the book, because the book is definitely like, oh yeah, this is reading it, like realize, oh, this is much closer to like a sci-fi thriller kind of thing rather than what is sort of described as like a big actiony kind of production. But this movie is definitely, and why my hopes got so high for the most recent movie is like
they got a horror director to come
like
in and
a return to like, oh, that is what Jurassic Park is to me. It's scary. It's not necessarily bloody or
Right.
or there's lots of death, but you should be afraid of this. Like, this isn't just a jaunt through the park where, oh, look, that's really cool. I really like it. That is so that's what this does that really well, and putting you in moments of like, this is why this shouldn't be. This is why dinosaurs are not a good idea, because
Little kid me did not read those moments of tension at all and was like, dinosaurs are cool.
Dinosaurs kick ass.
Kick ass.
yeah.
I want to hug him. He's got hugging arms. Tiny little hugging arms.
The other shot that always really weirdly stood out to me is when Malcolm, Richard Attenborough, and I think Arnold was still alive at this point, where they're having an argument, and then there's like a single shot on Jeff Goldblum, and it's slowly pushing in on him with his like shirt open.
Yeah, it's when they're in the control room still.
Yeah, and then growing up, I was always like, that's just a really weird, because there's like an argument going on behind the camera, but you're just closing in on Jeff Goldblum.
Just open shirt Jeff Goldblum.
And then
they knew what they were doing with that shot.
Well, I'm assuming because in the book, Ian Malcolm actually has a big long monologue there about essentially kind of recapping like the dangers of opening up a dinosaur park. It's like they must have been like pushing in, and then he has his big monologue, and then they realized we don't need that.
We don't need that.
You get it.
But they didn't
You understand.
But that was the only coverage they had of the dialogue.
Like that was the
they
only
needed.
establishing shot we have is pushing in on his bare chest.
And then because like they're having their argument, and then it cuts right after that. Now, so it's like that's a weird way to do it. So I'm assuming they had filmed him giving his big, because that's like his last speech before the character. Spoiler alert for the book, is like his big moment before he ends up dying in the book.
Yeah.
And so I assume that maybe at one point he had died in the movie, so like we need to give him his big send off, and they're like, we can't kill off Jeff Goldblum, and then so they just decided to cut anything related to that.
Yeah. After this, is there what shots of him are there that are really like? Is there anything stand out, or
After
is it just
that,
like
it's
no, here he is.
him hanging out with Hammond in the bunker.
Okay.
Where he's like in and out of his like morphine. He leads her through the thing because Hammond can't read directions.
He can't read a map.
But yeah, like, other than that, like
Who can?
he has like one line where. Does he have a line after that?
Actually, I think after he leads them, I think they're
Jeep, but I don't think he does.
Because after he leads her through the power station, then it just goes to the kids and them.
Then they're in the control room, Sam Neill
and we don't see them again until they
are
get
leaving.
Hammond on the phone.
Yeah, because that's when the one time in this film, and we'll get to it a lot more later, but the one time in this film where Sam Neill's American accent started to slip is when he's yelling, "Boot up the door locks."
Yeah.
We'll get into much worse, egregious moments of that later in the series, but that's the one thing where I was like, that's not an American accent. He's yelling that line in. I mean, it's another classic Jurassic Park line, but boot up the door locks.
The door locks. Boot up the door locks.
And then the other funny thing about this scene too is at this point Hammond is still like trying to save the park,
trying to salvage whatever he can from.
And I feel like there's another moment in there because he goes from that to immediately being like, you know what, fuck this place, without anything kind of happening in between.
Yeah,
because Malcolm and Hammond get in the Jeep. They pull out front after the T-Rex saves the day of the big swinging around.
Ruled the earth.
Yeah.
That big like so that when the T-Rex like busts in and like just murks all the raptors and like that sash like falls down in front of him and stuff, or her, sorry, Rexy is a girl, and her name is Rexy.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sexy Rexy?
Sexy Rexy. Like that is like one of the most just like iconic film moments that I remember, like even as like a little kid, like seeing that moment was like, that is important. Like seeing that moment on film was like that. And then there was also that part of me that was just like, this is why people like wrestling. Like that was such a like pro wrestling moment of just being like, fucking come at me, bro.
It's definitely a better moment than they had originally planned for the film, where John Hammond just comes in and shoots all the raptors in the head
with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And then one gets trapped in a scissor lift and gets squished.
Yeah.
Well, I I think is why Spielberg is like even now still like one of the greatest visual directors that is out there, because all of those things, those shots are like, it's clearly meant to get that reaction out of you. And there's a lot of things like that that are very that come off kind of corny. Like when that whole when dinosaurs ruled it, like that's like, yeah, that's for the little kids kind of feeling, but like it does not feel really family friendly, forced kind of, and there's a way that every one of those things is done in this movie that I feel like any other director just really fucks it up by having like, really jaunty tune going along with it, or just like something really corny. It feels really corny in any other movie. But
well, I think part of the thing is like, because he can fall into like, there are in like all the Steven Spielberg moments I don't like is when he falls into like the cornball kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's like the scene in Catch Me If You Can where Leonardo DiCaprio is about to get caught by Tom Hanks. And then like all the FBI agents run outside and they're like, the woman's like at the taxi service holds up the sign that has Tom Hanks's character's name on it. And like all of the old dads in the theater start busting out laughing. I'm like, oh, that's kind of corny. But like the problem is like everyone's grown up on Steven Spielberg.
Right,
so they don't have that. They don't have like they can fall into only having the corn cheese ball stuff and not having the other part where like, even though he's never written a script, he has like a really strong, he's a strong grasp on like the structure of how to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't know if he doesn't have the patience to like
sit down
get
and
down
write
and
something,
write a screenplay. Cause like all the behind the scenes stuff.
It's, I think he needs to be able to move and like be in it and like do.
I think he's best when he's like on the set talking with people, like
where he can just like map out the shots that he wants to do.
Yeah,
like,
because
so here's what's going to happen when I say action, this happens.
Yeah, because like for The Last Crusade special features, there's like scenes between him, Harrison Ford, and Sean Connery where they're like working out what the scene's going to be, but he's not giving them dialogue. He's just saying like, these are the beats that are going to, like, this is what's going to happen. And it's like, he's like, people that don't have that strong sense of how to put a story together and how moments work are just going to see like the surface level where sometimes he can go into the cheesy area and they're not going to be able to rein it back. I think the only person that really has gotten closest to hitting that was, I know this is like a stereotypical answer, but like J.J. Abrams is able to lean away from the cornball stuff usually.
I think that is definitely like he's clearly like school of Spielberg kind of like idea things. And
trying not to take us too far off topic or anything, but like Super 8 is clearly a love letter to Spielberg.
Yeah,
just Amblin in general, like everything that like that feels like an Amblin film, but isn't.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce that right? It's Amblin, right?
Amblin Entertainment.
Yeah. Amblin, yeah.
Amblin down the road.
Amblin.
Born an Amblin man.
Well, I guess most of us at least were, because that's when the movies were all like the early 80s is when they started making all these films. So yeah, they get off the island and you finally see the what's the birds they see?
Pelicans. They see pelicans.
But then like there's like the whole like, oh wait, these are connected to the dinosaurs. There's a familial, like I don't remember if that's ever mentioned, like the evolution of.
Yeah, Grant talks about it at the beginning,
right?
When he's like, no wonder these guys turned into birds and everybody laughs at him.
Right.
Which is like not a fringe paleontological theory.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
First try.
Like, I mean, maybe it was when the book was written, but like it is just, that's kind of just become the consensus. Also, the consensus of that community, because I'm not going to try to say it again. The consensus of that community is just don't listen to Jack Horner ever.
you know.
Well, didn't they recently realize that they had put all the leg bones on backwards on a lot of the dinosaurs? Or like
there's a whole lot of
like when they put all the the tibulas and the fibulas when they were putting them together, they like put them on backwards because they were assuming that they had walked like more upright when they were more like hunched down.
This is how my bones look.
So like.
Oh, is that why when you watch like the 1930 something Lost World, they're like basically like action figures standing straight up? As
well,
opposed
even like raptors or what is the actual dinosaur that the movie Raptors? It's
the Deinonychus.
Yeah, where they're more like they thought. There's some people think that dinosaurs actually had like ostrich legs because it's faster instead of walking like people where we have shitty knees that aren't made for running long distances.
Garbage knees.
Where they're because so we're going to go into people anatomy now. Like when people walk, when you take a step, all of the pressure just like compounds on your knees all day long. Whereas with ostriches, there's like no pressure gets put on their knees because it's not like a pressure point. It's not like an impact point on the legs. So that's why they can run fast and not. And then also like cheetahs too, their back legs, and cats, their back legs aren't like people.
No, they, for lack of a better term, bend the other way.
Yeah. So I think that's,
Let me grab my cat real quick.
Just kind of
show me your leg, fucker.
Bend his legs around.
Let's see if they've been back.
So that's Jurassic Park, 1993. Steven Spielberg, Michael Crichton, David Coep.
Also, an important, I think an important aspect of that last scene of them all on the helicopter, which I feel like is why, flash forward to 2001, I was a little disappointed. It's no dialogue in that scene at all.
Mm-hmm.
But there is like acting happening, and so like what little kid me inferred was the fact that like going into the movie, Alan Grant fucking just can't do kids. He hates kids.
Loves
can't
dinosaurs.
figure him out. But at the end of the movie, like the people that he is the closest to are these two kids.
Yeah,
which is just a thing of that movie of like having a character develop and having the person who was the least likely to be able to function with kids be the caretaker of these kids for the movie.
I think that's one of those like Steven, not necessarily creations, but something that he kind of understood better than what happens like with current day storytelling, where like that's just what you do now. Like there is no other way. Like if the person's with kids, they have to hate him because they have to learn a lesson by the end.
Yeah. And so there is just like a visual exchange between him and Laura Dern of just like her kind of having this look of like, see, kids aren't so bad, and him being like, yeah, you right. Let's not get together and have kids.
I mean, she had a kid eventually.
She had a kid.
Sam
eventually.
Neill turned into an incel or something weird's going on there.
He
got lost in his work.
He got lost in his work like
sad
that.
man.
He just became.
Well, we'll get into.
Yeah,
we'll
get into that
in another week. So I guess final go around. Would you guys recommend this film?
Oh,
I'm going to
absolutely.
say yes.
Absolutely.
I would recommend this film to
this
people
film,
that like.
as a slight throwback, even though I know he's not in the movie, this film gets 10 out of 10 George Clooney's from me.
I feel like George Clooney needs to get into this series.
Velociraptor number 2.
Played by George Clooney.
Alan.
I'm excited for when my daughter will sit down and watch the whole thing and just take it in. Like
there are so many movies that I'm really excited for Bennett to just be old enough for me to feel like it's okay to show him. Like right now, him being 3, I feel like it's okay to show him Jurassic Park because he's just going to have that like dinosaurs are cool reaction. But like there's a cutoff there at some point where it's like, okay, between I need to not show him
like
this.
This might turn you off to it for
between like 5 and 10 where it's like you know what death is now.
Yeah.
Let me show you some. Let me show you some horrible life is shitty. Here's some horrible deaths.
Here's some horrible deaths.
But I mean, we've watched like Land Before Time already. That's handled that death real well.
A series that's still going, by the way. I just recently found out.
Like all of it is on HBO. There's like 29 movies.
There really are.
All on HBO.
One of them auto played earlier today for Bennett while I was cleaning the kitchen, and it was, for some reason, it just decided 10. That's the one you want to watch. You want to watch 10. And so I went out there like right at the end of it, and it's the one where they discovered that Littlefoot has a dad and he's alive, and he like is the leader of this herd.
Nah, fuck all of those movies. Fuck everything that came after that first one.
Yeah,
I mean, like that was like the point of the movie is that there's one place where all the dinosaurs aren't going to die, and then 40 years later, somehow they're still coming up with new shit.
Yeah. And as it turns out, like I was in the kitchen, couldn't really hear, but like looking out at the TV, I kind of heard Littlefoot's dad, and I was like, "Is that Kiefer Sutherland?" Immediately went to IMDb, like, "That's Kiefer Sutherland." How did they have Kiefer Sutherland money?
Well, they don't have to pay anything for animation, writing, music. Are they still musicals?
Oh God, they're still musicals.
Oh God.
Ever since 2, from 2 on, they've been musicals.
That's really
No,
bizarre.
I will stand by that first movie. Like,
the first movie
great.
is solid. From a scientific standpoint, no, but like the movie's fine.
Great.
It's a good movie. Also, like I remember seeing that movie in the theater as a little kid, and having the Bambi effect almost. I would just like, little kid me doesn't understand like what just happened. Is like, oh, they're not drawing the mom character anymore.
No, I guess she's staying back there. Good night, Mom.
And good night, Mom. Whereas like now as an adult / as a parent watching that, and just be like, fucking movie, fuck. Yeah. So then also I was thinking about that earlier today too, of like that scene that Littlefoot has with his mom, like as she's dying. And I feel like somebody at Disney who was just about to start work on The Lion King saw that and was like, hold my beer. I think we can top that.
All right. So that was Jurassic Park. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We did a little bit more than I thought we would. There is plenty more of Jurassic Park month this June. June Jurassic Park. Yeah, you can listen to us Moist Boys podcast doers on right now we're on the Stitcher app, so go look up Moist Boys podcast on there if you like listening to podcasts. We will be having more updates soon. We also have our YouTube channel. If you type in Moist Boys podcast and kind of dig through the videos that pop up, one of ours eventually. We also are on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/moistboyspodcast, I recently figured out how to change the URL instead of just a random collection of numbers.
Random code.
Yeah. So you can actually send people there. Everything we have is uploaded there right now for the most part. There's a couple of reviews that are not up on there, but are on the YouTube channel. And if you follow at Moist Boys Pod on Twitter, sometimes I'll post on there.
Twit out.
Tweet it.
Put it out.
But yeah, so I'm Josh.
I'm Jonathan.
I am Josue.
Thank you for listening.